Hi, I'm Mrs. Mason. Welcome to my classroom. For our first investigation, we are going to be investigating growing alligators. I have some large growing alligators and I have some mini growing alligators, and we're going to find out what happens when we put them in liquids. For this investigation, we are using these growing alligators that I purchased from stevespanglerscience.com, and I will put a link in the description. You can find other growing creatures at other stores. You can find them online. I found the stingray, there's snakes. I've even found some at the dollar stores, and I've even found this one, these little growing frogs, online. And I found using some of these other items that you can use them for one investigation, but they tend to not last year after year. So if you're going to be repeating this experiment several times, these growing alligators tend to last a little bit longer. For 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we will be using these mini growing alligators, which I also found at stevespanglerscience.com. You can use some of the other discount Grow Pals, but you just want to make sure that you're using 4 of the exact same kind, because that's not a variable that you want to change. For intermediate, we are using some smaller growing gators, and so the plastic tubs are much smaller. I think we found these in our science kits already, but you could probably find them at a discounted dollar store. This will be the setup in my classroom for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade long-term investigation. In 3rd grade, the variable we will change is the type of water. So we will compare tap water and distilled water. For 4th grade, we will investigate the amount of salt that is dissolved in the water. So the variable we will change is the amount of salt. So we'll compare 45 grams of salt and 90 grams of salt. And for 5th grade, we will be looking at clear liquids. If changing the type of liquid will change how the gator grows. So we have our control gator that will not be in any liquid. And the original experiment calls for rubbing alcohol, but that's hard to come by right now. So I substituted a different clear liquid. So we will be comparing hydrogen peroxide and vinegar. After I collected my data, I recorded my results in a data table, and I also filled that in on a graph. My grow alligators in the tap water were 1.7 grams, and the mass of the grow alligator in the distilled water starting out is 1.7 grams. And I recorded both of that in a graph. For 4th grade, all of the grow alligators were the same size. So the one that will be in the water with 45 grams of salt is 1.7 grams. And the mass of the grow alligator that will be in the water with 90 grams of salt is also 1.7 grams. And I recorded that in a graph. For 5th grade, the mass of all of the grow alligators was the same, 1.7 grams. And the length of all of the grow alligators was 6 centimeters. So for 5th grade, we're recording 2 measurements and comparing them with a control variable. And down below, this is where I graphed the mass of all of the grow critters, the grow alligators, and then I recorded the length in centimeters. I graphed it. And that is my data wall. For each of my gators, I'm going to add 250 milliliters of a liquid. So for this experiment, for these 2 tubs, we have 250 milliliters of tap water. We want to keep the amount of liquid the same for all of the gators. And for distilled, I'll add in 250 milliliters of distilled water. So they each have 250 milliliters of liquid. For these 2 variables, I need to put 45 grams of salt in one container and 90 grams of salt in the other container. So I put my tray on the digital scale, and when I turn it on, it should zero out. And I want to make sure that my measurements on the side are recording grams. So I'm going to add 45 grams of salt. A little too much. I'm going to pinch it out. There we go. Now it's measuring 45 grams of salt, and I'm going to put that in one container. And then I'll do the same thing for 90 grams of salt. And it went a little bit over, so I'm going to pull out a pinch or 2. There we go. It measures 90 grams, and I'll put that in the second tub. Then for each tub, I will add 250 milliliters of water and give it a good stir. It may not all dissolve, but that's okay. For this set of variables, we will put 250 milliliters of peroxide into this container and 250 milliliters of vinegar into the other one. And I'm going to wash out my cup just to make sure that it's clean. And then we'll add 250 milliliters of vinegar to the other cup. So at the end of day one, we have our gators in the water. We have our gators in salt water. You'll notice that the salt didn't completely dissolve, but that's okay. And we have our gators in the hydrogen peroxide and the vinegar. And so we'll let them soak overnight and we'll check back tomorrow and get some new measurements.